have you got any more questions while we're warming up? Okay, well, last week we did what I think is the nub of it all, which is the whole idea of the one consciousness. So if you only take away one thing, remember that. So everything is one, and that's the whole essence of it all. And if you get that completely, then you can just go home. There's nothing more to learn.
That's in the ancient home.
Yeah. Go back to your true home. But if, like most of us, you want to know a bit more about it, and you want to know, for instance, how does the one consciousness manifest as a creation in time and space, then most traditions have the one mind manifesting through a series of levels. And it's a wonderful way of approaching, because some people get oneness immediately, and for other people they need to approach it in a more gradual, metaphorical way. And for instance, in the early Christian tradition, the early church, they had the concept known as body, soul and spirit. So you've got your body and then your soul, and spirit, which was one with God, is your deepest identity. So in that model, you and God aren't separate, you're both the same thing. But later on, I think in the modern Christian church, it's more become you're a body soul, and spirit is somewhere up there somewhere. So it creates a dualism. And in the Vedic tradition, in the Vedanta, and I think it starts in the Upanishads, they have this model which is physical, subtle, causal and divine. And I absolutely adore this. It's almost my very favourite subject, and it sort of makes a framework for life. But it's just so simple, and you'll find it in most traditions, it just has different names and different terminology. And in relation to your turning training and the Macabre, I find it incredibly helpful. So it's a way of looking at how the one consciousness manifests as a creation in time and space, and where we all fit in that, and why there is a manifest creation. And last week Paola was asking about the soul, and I said to her I'll explain it this week, but she's not here now. Never mind. She can listen to it. So I'm going to explain it just sort of quite simply, and I'm going to start down the bottom here. So this is physical, what's called the physical level, and as you'll see, each of these worlds or levels are contained within the larger one. So in my diagram I've done these sort of dotty lines to show that they interpenetrate each other, because ultimately everything is the divine. But for the purposes of training, you take yourself from where you are, and normally we experience ourselves as a separate mind-body in a vast mechanical universe. So, physical body, on the individual level, that's just body of flesh and bones, and it can all be weighed and measured by science, and bits of it fall off, or you can cut bits of it off if you want. But for some people, that's where the sense of identity ends. So if someone asks, who are you? You might just say, well, I'm my body of flesh and bones. And that's all observable by science. And that's individual level. On the large scale, that's the whole physical universe of 200 billion galaxies or more, all expanding in space. It might be an infinite number of galaxies, and there might even be an infinite number of universes containing infinite number of galaxies. So if you look at it physical level, big scale, it's absolutely immensely vast. It's incomprehensibly vast, and no one really knows how vast it is. And there's still things in physical science you just can't get your head round, like how does space go on forever? What's beyond the expanding galaxies? How can something stop? And if it stops, then what's beyond the stop? So it's just an insoluble problem at that level. So physical level, easy. And then that's contained within what's known as subtle. And subtle really just translates as psyche. So that's the realm of your thoughts and your feelings and your desires. Physical body you can observe. Subtle body, you know your own subtle body, but you're not going to really know someone else's subtle body unless you get to know them very well. And so that's really a realm of direct personal experience. So I don't know what you're thinking, and you don't know what I'm thinking. You only know what's in the subtle level to the degree that it's reflected in the physical. So if you're happy, you sort of smile a lot, for instance, and you glow. But if you're miserable, then you look very unsmiley. And also your whole body language reflects what's in the subtle body. And that physical equates with the state of consciousness known as the waking state. So that's what we're in most of the time during the day. And subtle body equates with sleep, with dreams. So at night you go into this sleep world of dreams. Okay, so that's what's known often in different traditions as the mind-body mechanism. In Zen they call it mind-body, because they have a concept called mind-body dropped. But that's mind and body. And again, for most people, if you ask them, who are you? Or you ask the question, who am I? Then you're going to identify with the mind-body mechanism. But if you're very observant, you'll notice that when you're thinking and when you're feeling, there's also a still awareness, unchanging, behind your thinking and your feeling, which never changes. And it's just like it witnesses this dance going on at this level. So again, it's like behind your mind and your body, if you look backwards, behind your eyes is this great unfathomable ocean of stillness. And that's known as the causal body. And that equates with deep, deep dreamless sleep. So here you are in the physical level, and then at night you go to bed and you go into this world of dreams where various dramas are acted out. And then at a certain point, that's called rapid eye movement sleep, REM sleep. And then at a certain moment you go into deep dreamless sleep where there's no experience and there's no knowledge and there's no time, most crucially. Dreaming state still has a degree of time, but it's different to physical time. Causal, dreamless, it's absolutely timeless. So you can fall asleep go into dreamless sleep at midnight and wake up at 8 o'clock, and it's almost like it's instantaneous. It's like nothing's taken place and there's no time. And also in deep meditation you'll go into the causal. It's like the thinking and the feeling processes. At first the body settles down, then your psyche gradually settles, and then you enter this realm which really feels at first just like a presence, a still presence. And then it's because there's no experience at that level, you often only know about it afterwards. So it's like you suddenly come out of that and you're often drenched in happiness down at these levels. So there's no experience at the causal level. And it has different parts, but I'm trying to keep it simple for you. So I'm just treating it as one entity. It's also the realm of what I referred to last week as your blueprint, which is like all your talents and all the things you're going to experience in all your life is stored there in potential. It's almost like it's an enfolded blueprint. And physicist David Bohm refers to that as the implicate order, and he says it's enfolded, which is a metaphor I love. So it's like the light of consciousness shines through this level. So in one way it's almost like a coloured film which gives rise to your individuality and your different talents and likes and dislikes and quirks. And in the Vedic Indian philosophy they call that colour, they give it the name of samskara, which I think is a wonderful concept. And there are different ways it's created, but often when you're very young, in early childhood, you find particular types of behaviour are ways of getting your needs met. And also there are different ways that you'll find of avoiding trauma and pain. And if you do these different things often enough, they all sort of become habitual, and they all go to build up the samskara in the causal level. So then it becomes habitual to react and behave in a certain way. And because it's so deep inside you, you're often totally unaware of it. So you're often unaware of what's driving you and motivating you at that deeper level. And often it's as a result of particularly of traumas you've had earlier in life, and it all goes to build this film. And as I think we mentioned once before, if you have something deep in your nature which is spoiling your happiness, then often that has to be examined through such practices as psychotherapy. Meditation's great, but in certain cases, if something's sabotaging your life and your happiness, then you might need professional help to get a psychotherapist to take you back into what's going on deep and what the causes of it are. Because often once you recognise it, then it just starts to dissolve of its own accord. So, but that's not the end of the story, because behind that is what's known as the divine level. I put a big I, that's like your true I, which is also the true I of the universe. So the thing which is looking out through your eyes, which is also your basic sense of I am, it's your basic sense of I, and it's universal to all of us. It's universal, it's the same I which is looking out through all the cats and dogs and cows and dolphins and whales and guinea pigs and everything else. It's all the same universal consciousness. Where we differ for the purposes of the drama in time and space is at this level down here. So in the Christian terminology, this is body, and this area together here is taken as soul. So I'm answering Paola's question. And then the whole caboodle, including the end bit, is spirit. So that's body, soul, spirit. So at this level, individuality sort of starts here at the causal level. And it's the most wonderful. I adore this metaphor because there are so many things you can explain with it. Because often when you look at suffering in life, suffering mostly takes place down here in the physical and the subtle. But often suffering at this level can have a totally transforming effect at this level. And at the deepest identity, who you really are, the I which is looking out right now, is always beyond suffering. So behind everything, behind all the drama of life, your true identity is totally outside of the drama, as well as containing it all. So it gives a wonderful non-dual model. And I've equated it with the I am something, I am nothing, I am everything. Because physical subtle is definitely the realm of I am something, because we have these separate identities. So I've definitely got a Philip physical body, and I've got a Philip psyche. So that's the realm of where almost, although my nature is divine, I've imposed this identity on top of it, and having that separate identity leads to suffering. But if you have a method like meditation or turning or prayer, whatever your particular route is, or just in deep sleep at night, you enter this realm where you go beyond the I am something, and you go into the I am nothing. So it's like the total emptiness of deep sleep, or the total stillness of deep meditation. And when you're in a life trauma, the most wonderful thing ever is when you go into deep sleep at night, because all the trauma disappears until you wake up again. So I just think that's a wonderful concept. So that's I am nothing. But if you go through the I am nothing and you just notice the pure sense of I am, and then you notice that absolutely everything is contained within it. So when you're here, or here, there's still a subject and an object. So you're the subject, and you're looking out on an external world, which is the object. And as you go backwards in the causal chain, subject and object disappears, because you start to realize that absolutely everything is the subject. But there's no place where your sense of I ends. Normally here you have a boundary. So physical body, I sort of end where my toes end down there and the top of my head ends up here. But divine level, it's totally, your identity is totally without boundary, and it includes everything. And it's a wonderful way of deconstructing your sense of being a separate self, if that's what you want to do. Because the ideal is, in the movie of life, is you're acting out your role in the drama, but you're also aware simultaneously of what your true identity is. So you're aware that you are just consciousness acting this particular role you've been given in the drama of life. And the way I do the deconstructing myself is, Rumi has a really great story in the Masnavi, which tells about these ants who are on a bit of paper, and there's a pen writing on the paper, and one of the ants says, "Isn't it wonderful that this pen can do this writing?" And another ant says, no, it's not the pen which is doing the writing, it's the hand which is holding the pen. And another ant says, no, it's not the hand, it's the arm which is moving the hand which is doing the writing. And the ants go back and back in the chain of causality until one ant, who's a very wise ant, he says, no, none of these things are are doing the writing. The writing is caused by the universal spirit that gives rise to all things. So what the ants are doing there, what Rumi is saying, is you go back, you take yourself back in the chain of causality as to what is the origin of phenomena, what's the origin of your thoughts, what's the origin of everything. If you say everything is emerging from the physical, then you're like the ant who just said depends doing the writing. Then you can go back, you can say, well, it's coming from my thoughts arise now to my psyche, and that's giving rise to my physical actions. And so, but then again, you're only being like the ants going back as far as the arm, really. So you go back and back, because you'll notice that your dreams and your thoughts and your inspirations are all emerging almost like out of this ocean which lies behind both your body and your psyche. So there's a brilliant bit where Rumi describes it. Know that true is the text thou didst not throw when thou threwest. Whatsoever the soul soweth is from the soul of the soul. So again, know that true is the text thou didst not throw when thou threwest. Whatsoever the soul soweth is from the soul of the soul. I adore that bit of Rumi from the Masnavi, because what he's saying is it's necessary to be like the ants and not stop at this separate level of identity or doership, but to observe where everything is arising from. And he calls it the soul of the soul, which is, of course, is the divine level. And for Paola, you're here. You're here. You missed your really good bit.
Oh, really? You started it already?
Yeah.
The beginning.
Yeah. But what I did say is this bit equates with soul. So that's both your subtle level of psyche and the deep hidden potential and your blueprint that lies behind it. And then the divine is your true nature, your basic sense of I, which is universal to everyone and everything. So there's your soul right there.
And that's still individual.
That's still individual, because that's the bit you missed, as we talked about what's known as samskara, which is like a coloured film in the causal body, built up partly by repetition of events, which gives rise to your natural colour. But it also contains all your talents. It's where your wonderful singing voice comes from, all your musical talents, and where my painting talents come from. So it's like that gives rise to all your individual colour. I love the way Rumi takes you back, and you'll find when we discuss the Makabali symbolism next week that you almost, in the different salams in the ceremony, you go back and back in this chain of causality. And there are so many different ways you can use this model. Looking at it from bottom up or top down, you have a totally different view of the universe and yourself. When you're looking from bottom up, you're looking from the point of view of being a physical body or a mind body. So you experience yourself as this mind body within this vast physical universe of 200 billion galaxies. So from the point of view of that model, you're just a little speck within this vastness. And that's quite a scary view. And particularly in Buddhism, they refer to absolute and relative knowledge. Relative knowledge relates to the world of the world of appearances. So when you experience yourself as this little physical body within the 200 billion galaxies or more, then you're infinitesimally small. But from the point of view of the non-dual traditions, that's actually not the reality, that's just a relative viewpoint. So when people start off learning a method or joining a tradition, you have what's known as relative knowledge, and relative knowledge relates to your belief that you're a separate entity within a vast universe. So you give a person knowledge that relates to their belief that they're separate. So it's not absolute knowledge, because absolute knowledge is from the point of view of the one consciousness. But it's very important this, because you'll find within most traditions there's quite a lot of contradictions and a lot of paradox, and that's because you're looking at exactly the same thing from two completely different angles. And so relative knowledge it's just in Advaita they call it knowledge for the purposes of training, and in Buddhism the Buddha called it ways and means to help beings lost in delusion, but not the absolute truth. So you come up with these concepts which help people, which take people from where they are or where they perceive themselves to be, so that's as a separate mind and body. And that includes various different practices and even something like the law of karma, which you wanted to know about. Because when you turn it around and you look at it from the point of view of the absolute, then everything already exists within you. So here you're a little physical speck in a vast multidimensional universe. From the point of view of your true self, the whole universe of 200 billion galaxies or more all exists within you. So you experience your everything as contained within you. So it's no longer you waking up in the morning as a little speck in a vast universe. It's more every time you open your eyes you give birth to the whole universe. So that's absolute and that's relative. Bottom up is the relative perspective. Top down is the absolute perspective. So that again is you're a speck, and from that point of view the whole universe exists within you. And incidentally, in the near-death experience, there are some amazing accounts where after death people find that their identity is like a spectrum, and at one level it's like they're a separate entity, but then they go deeper and they find that everything already exists within them. So that again I find the most marvellous concept. So bottom up and top down, but the reality is top down. Bottom up is like, it's almost like a sort of something created by the play of the light. It's that's why it's regarded as illusory, but it's a necessary illusion for the purposes of the unfolding drama. When you're 5 years old, there's something looking out through your eyes, which is your basic sense of I am. And when you're 65, that basic thing looking out is exactly the same. It hasn't changed one bit. What changes is this. The physical body goes through rapid changes between 5 and 65. For one, most of your hair falls out. and subtle body, you go through all these different interests and so much changes, but there's something behind that when you're 5 and all through life, which is always there, and it never changes, and it's totally universal, and it's totally ever present. So, what practices do, practices like dervish turning, because that's the one we're all learning at the moment, is it takes your identity back through these different levels till you realize that all the time your nature is that. All the time this is just a superimposition, and this is dying and changing all the time. So as I say, your physical appearance changes rapidly and your cells die rapidly. So there's no continuity at all here, but this gets superimposed on top of that, and we identify with this as a separate individual, and that gives rise to a separate sense of doership. Whereas from the point of view of this model, everything is the manifestation of oneness. Now there's one more bit I want to bring in to really complete this. And Dr. Rolls once said, I love this, he said, we can get all the refreshment we need and pass it on just from this model of one consciousness manifesting through 3 levels. And then he said the other concept is the 3 gunas. And with that, he said we could get all the refreshment we needed and pass it on. So that's sort of what I've been doing ever since. And I just want to explain the gunas, because it's quite relevant to this, and it's relevant to turning. In the Indian tradition, the Vedic tradition, they have 3 different qualities of energy, and these are known as the gunas, and they are quite simply, they're called rajas, which is the guna or energy of activity, and from it our English word rage comes. And then there's tamas, from which our English word tame comes, and tamas is like the guna of inertia. So you've got these 2 opposing forces. You've got activity like you need in the day. So when you wake up in the morning, I'm always a bit groggy, but when you come to, you need to be active. And then to get to sleep at night, you need to be able to turn off the activity, and that's the time of tamas, inertia, when everything closes down and you get rest and refreshment in sleep. But that's normally just those sort of 2 bounce off, and it's the play of the gunas, and you get night and day and summer and winter. But there's a 3rd guna which is known as sattva, and sattva comes from the Sanskrit word sat, which is the present tense of the verb to be, so it means I am. And sattva is the energy of being, and it's not activity like rajas, and it's not sleepy inertia like tamas. It's more like this deep, still inner contentment, which also radiates deep, unconditional happiness. And you often experience it in sacred buildings. You get this amazing atmosphere, or after your meditation practice, or after a lovely macabre, you'll feel full of sattva. You have this energy of being. We have a stray cat that we feed called Fluffy Tail, and I was looking at him through the window yesterday, and we were both sort of blinking at each other, and I said to Helen, Fluffy Tail's very sattvic today. I could sort of see his being. We were both just sort of reflecting back and forth through the window at each other, blinking and being. So cats are very good at sattva, except when you give them fish, and then they get a bit identified. So, another description of the gunas is that at the causal level, sattva is like there's a wall, and sattva is a transparent wall of glass. And so it's like that your samskara at this level, through spiritual practice, or just through living your life and doing the things you love, becomes like a transparent mirror. And that allows the light of consciousness to shine right through your being, and you get this inner illumination. And again, after a Makabali or a deep meditate, that's just what it feels like. It feels like you're still you've still got all your individual talents, but it's like there's this inner glow coming through you. And we mentioned a couple of weeks ago about Annie Branston, how she appears a good example of that. And I remember with Dr. Rolls, it was difficult to describe. It was like he sort of glowed in some way, and something was sort of coming through his eyes. So you see it in people often who have had a lot of life experience or done a lot of practice, and it's like you become transparent. You become a transparent vehicle for consciousness. And that, again, as we said, is the symbolism of the dervish posture, because you're receiving here, and then it's passing through your transparent heart, and then going outwards there. So that's what it's a symbol of. And again, that's what the ney flute symbolises. It symbolises a vehicle becoming transparent, so it's just a vehicle for the light of consciousness. So that's enough for starters, anyway.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Sorry, I came late. I'm sorry. I've always troubled with the causal. Actually, even the name causal, does it refer? I mean, does the cause have anything to do with that? Subtle is clear, physical also.
Yeah.
So causal, I'm always confused.
In real life, in the Advaita tradition, there are two parts to the causal. I'm sort of simplifying it for you so as not to get too complicated. Part of it is, I'm not sure if you were here when I was explaining it, but it's what's known as samskara, which is like your blueprint. So what's going on in your psyche is going on in your conscious experience. So thinking, feeling, memory. Though a lot of memory is actually, I think, dips over into the causal, because it's what David Bohm called enfolded. So it's not visible to you. It's all like a blueprint somewhere beyond you. So all your talents and all the things you know, as you go through life, you don't every day say, I'm a singer and I know this and I know all these scales, blah, blah, blah. It's all sort of hidden away somewhere. And your talents, as you go through life evokes different things out of you. So you find yourself in a difficult situation, and it draws out a talent often that you never knew you had. So that part of the causal, the way it's described, is it's like the blueprint of your life is there in potential, in an enfolded form. So it's like a coloured screen. And the other part of that is just total stillness, it's total immobility. So there's something beyond your psyche. You're not just you're not just your thoughts, you're not your desires. When you're thinking and when you're feeling, there's an awareness of your thinking and your feeling. And that's not coming from your thinking and feeling, because it's totally still. And it's sometimes referred to as the causal witness, because it witnesses everything going on in your life totally without comment. Subtle level, you're commenting all the time. You're saying, I like that, I don't like that. I'm being really good, I'm being really bad. Causal witness doesn't, it's totally wordless, it just witnesses without comment.
Thank you. So the word causal does not have anything to do with cause.
Well, it does in a way, because it's the cause of what's happening down here. So all your singing talents are in here in enfolded potential.
Right.
The light of consciousness is shining through it, and hey presto, it's manifested on the subtle and physical. So it's like, I think of it as like a slide in a slide projector. You put in these different coloured slides, and the light of consciousness shines through and projects it onto the screen. But in a sense, these are all metaphorical. And going back to how I started, all that really matters is that you are the one consciousness, you are the divine. That's the thing to remember, everything is the divine. These are more like limited perspectives of the whole. You're more like, Ouspensky uses the analogy of looking at things just through a keyhole or a letterbox. And a lot of time in life we draw our conclusions from a very limited perspective of an event or something, but then later on you see a much bigger picture. So these are partial understandings of the whole, which are useful metaphors in a way of approaching the whole, if you find it difficult to jump straight into the concept of oneness. But things like the Mukabale practices are really good methods for you to experience this all directly for yourself, and then it comes out in your own words. At the moment you're just sort of hearing a Philip explanation of it, but what you really want is your own direct experience of it, which you're having all the time. And when you're going through life, and when life's really tough, as it often is, it's great to recall at times of need that you are the totality, that you are this great ocean of stillness that lies behind everything. And again, in the dying process, as multiple reports show, people, as this, you sort of die from this end, and so physical body gradually shuts down, and thinking and feeling starts to shut down. And often at this level you'll get a replay of the whole of your life, all the key points of it, but no one judges the replay. It's just you suddenly see the whole of your life as if you were an outside observer, and you sometimes think, oh dear, I didn't do very well there, wasn't nice to that person. But then again, you also see where you've been really nice to people. But what happens after that is often this, what people describe as a being of light appears. And the deeper they go into that being of light, the more they realise that that's actually, you're meeting your true nature. So it's like the moment of death is your moment for reuniting with the being of light, which is yourself and is everyone's self. And that's what Rumi refers to as the beloved. So that's why, again, in Sufism and the Mukabale, it's all about union with the beloved, which is union with your true self, which is also the self of the universe. Any more?
So I've come across teachings which describe the ultimate cause, the source of creation, as the vast emptiness, the no thing. So how does that relate to this schema where here you have the divine described as the everything, and then you go into the nothing? How does that kind of
It relates.
to that?
If you remember last week or the week before, I said about Allah being the not, or the no thing. And for there to be a thing, there has to be a subject and an object. But with Allah, it's both subject and object. So it's both who you are and who everything else is. So while our identity remains at mind-body mechanism, you experience yourself as a separate being. So there's subject-object, there's you and me, there's you and the world. With the realization of what you already are but don't know it, which is the divine, which is Allah, there's subject-object, the ceases, because you realize that everything is you. I'm not sure I'm answering your question
Okay.
at all.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
yeah, I'm trying to get behind your question.
It ceases when you realize that I am nothing.
Yeah,
Is that what you're
yeah. You're both nothing and you're everything. So it's almost like there are two stages to realization in most mystical traditions. The first stage is you normally access this great stillness within you, and that's I am nothing. So in Buddhism they call that voidness, the great void, or sunyata. But you don't stop there. You realize that I am nothing is actually a fullness that includes everything. So it's almost like there's two stages. You realize I am nothing, and then you realize I am everything.
So wouldn't that be more accurate if you had written across here, I am nothing, I am everything, transposing both of them?
I think normally I am nothing comes before I am everything.
But you're still nothing at the same time as being.
You are, but you're everything. Well, that's why the dotted lines are there, because everything, each level contains all the other levels. So you've got the I am everything containing the I am nothing and everything else, and I am something. So none of those, this is just metaphorical, but none of them are in compartments, which is why I've drawn it with a dotted line. But ultimately you're everything. But there are multiple different metaphorical ways of looking at it. As I said at the beginning, we're trying to explain the inexplicable. And it's a model of direct experience.
Also in I am nothing, as you explained earlier, is when you're instead of total surrender, like deep like meditation or sleep. So in that case, yeah, we are nothing because we just like completely surrender to what is.
Yeah.
So that's also a way of seeing it.
Any more questions?
Would you mind explaining that poem again? Or I think it was extracted from that Louis in your...
Oh, the Rumi one?
The Rumi one.
Yeah.
Which, because you were saying that you loved it and it bring them together, but I didn't understand it.
Okay, it's this one. Know that true is the text thou didst not throw when thou threwest. Whatsoever the soul soweth is from the soul of the soul. Is that the one?
That's the one.
Yeah, I adore that. What Mr. Rezui said to us once is you must never interpret the Mahnavi. So I'm making the fatal flaw. So I'll tell you how I see that. And it's very similar to Zen concepts, where, like in Zen archery, you learn when you fire the bow, but it's not actually you pulling the string. So when the Zen archer hits the second arrow through the bamboo wall and it dissects the first arrow exactly on the bullseye, he says all praise to the Buddha. And it's exactly that metaphor. So what Rumi for me is saying there, thou didst not throw. So say I'm throwing a ball and I think, oh great, I'm throwing a ball. What that's saying is everything is coming from the soul of the soul. So by the soul of the soul, Rumi means the divine level, Allah, whatever you want to call it, Buddha mind, Christ principle, whatever your word for it is, everything is being done by the one consciousness, because the whole of creation is the dance of oneness. So that's, in my understanding, is thou didst not throw when thou threwest. So all the time I'm painting all these designs, and I could pat myself on the back and say, aren't you a wonderful designer, Philip? You do all these beautiful things. But what actually happens when I'm doing them is it's like, as any artist knows, they appear in front of me. And when I painted it, I thought, my God, where did that come from? It's really good, well done. But I'm not saying well done to me. I'm saying well done to wherever it's coming from. And the way Room is explaining it, and the way I understand it, is everything is one coming from the divine. Everything is oneness dancing. But the word ego, when it's used in a limiting sense, means that the mind-body vehicle is claiming for its own what is really coming from the divine. So that's my understanding. Room is telling you, and with the ant story, and I love his metaphorical stories, is try and trace the eye source back. Trace your thoughts back. A lot of Buddhist meditations are involved watching the arising of thought. See where everything arises from. Is that making it at all clear?
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Philip, I was wondering, I know this is something more practical, but I was thinking about, doesn't that lead to kind of like a moral nihilism?
It could do. That's why you have absolute and relative perspectives, and why there's knowledge for the purposes of training. Because in lots of religious traditions, you have sort of codes of morality and things, don't you, down at this level. So in Judaism and Christianity, you have things like the Ten Commandments, and there are other laws in Islam, and
Or you have the devil.
devil, yeah,
God.
that's dualism, God and the devil. So all of those concepts, from the point of view of his model, are relative concepts which help people from the point of view of perceiving yourself as a separate self. So in ordinary religion, where sort of you give out these different guides to living, which sort of act as your rudder in life. When you realise that you're like a transparent vehicle, then it's like the rules you live by come from your true self. So it's like that what you do is you're just acting out your part in the drama. So that's why the absolute and relative knowledge is very important, and it's often important not to confuse the two. Often in what I think is called nowadays Neo-Advaita, which is the new Advaita teachers, is there's a lot of mixing of absolute and relative. So you can say, oh, it doesn't matter what you do, everything's consciousness, I can do just exactly what I want. But you still, at a relative level, you still have to act as if you're separate, and as if you have total free will, and as if it's all up to you. So at this level, you still try and do your best for everyone, like in Christianity, love your neighbour as yourself. But when you look at it from absolute level, everything is a dance of oneness, and that includes all the things you like and the things you don't like, and all the people you think are villains and all the people you think are saints.
So no more sins.
Huh?
No more sins.
No more sins. Any more? It's such a riveting.
What is sin?
What is sin? I think sin was a mistranslation. Just think it's the word metanoia. There's a word which was translated as sin, which doesn't actually, in its original Aramaic, it doesn't mean sin. It meant missing the mark. It was a term used in archery. And it meant missing the point of your existence. So, when it says in the Bible or other traditions you've sinned, you haven't really sinned. All it means is you've just missed, for the time being, the point of your existence.
Missed the mark.
Huh?
You missed the mark.
You've missed the mark. Mark was a term in archery where, again, the arching metaphor, you're aiming at the mark. But with religion, you get, in my understanding, the original founder of religion has this understanding of the total unity, and they talk about that and teach it. But very rapidly, within a few generations, people interpret it at their level. So, if you take Christianity as religion, which is all about unity and love, suddenly turns into the Spanish Inquisition and lots of other strange things. So things become very different to how they started out. But because most of it's in parable, that's absolutely brilliant, because meaning and story is enfolded within parables. And as long as no one rewrites the parable, you're in luck, because you can find your way back to the source through the metaphors and stories. And in the Indian tradition, they have a concept called viveka, which translates as discriminative wisdom. And in Buddhism, the same thing is called prajna, which again means discriminative wisdom. And what that refers to is the ability to use your discrimination to get behind things and go back to the causeless cause. So viveka and prajna are not allowing yourselves to stop here or stop here, but to keep going back in your understanding and experience to the ultimate cause, which is also called the causeless cause. But I love viveka and prajna, discriminative wisdom. And in any religion, I think you can find your way back.
Can we compare discriminative wisdom with an arrow? That is, if you're missing the point, is that what you're saying?
It's a bit like the arrow, but you're not stopping. Rumi says, "Don't stop on the way." Somewhere he puts it brilliantly. So here we are. The real beloved is that one who is single, who is thy beginning and end. When thou findest him, thou wilt not remain in expectation of aught else. He is both the manifest and the mystery. So that's the manifest and that's the mystery. He is the Lord of states of feeling, not dependent on any state. Month and year are slaves of that moon. When he bids for state, it does his behest. When he wills, he makes bodies become spirit. One that is stopped on the way is not at the journey's end. He will be seated, waiting and seeking the state. What Rumi is saying there is, don't stop halfway. And where he refers to states is like with the gunas, different states of consciousness come and go as part of the dance of life. So you'll have deep sleep, dream sleep, waking state, samadhi, turaya, enlightened state. All of these are states that come and go, but behind that is your basic sense of I, which is always there, and just quietly witnesses the changing states, and that's total stillness. So what Rumi is saying is go direct to what you already are. Don't get too allured, don't get bogged down in the changing drama. Witness it, enjoy it, witness it, and then let it go.
Okay. In that sense, does fear that stops quite often to, go back in the course of change? Does it go to just a subtle level, or
Got fear.
Yeah.
Fear's a product of a subtle level because it does have a sort of physical counterparts in your body. But again, fear's just another state in the great sort of play of life. And when you are full of fear, there's something which is aware that you're in fear, and that awareness isn't in fear. So always abide as the awareness rather than the thing it's aware of.
But the fear that's a warning.
You listen to any fear, you listen to the warning and take heed of it.
But doesn't that come from somewhere else then?
No, I think everything in this model is rising from the same source. But the fear there is really helping you.
Philip, could you say something about cause and effect? My understanding is that it's a function, but does it relate to the cause? Or is it just two different things?
I think it relates to that when you're talking about the way things unfold, cause and effect. But could you qualify the question more?
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially, there's not just cause and effect, is there? That's just one part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think cause and effect sort of happens on so many different levels that it's difficult to... Sometimes you can see what's causing something and what the effect is. Other times it's part of a much, much bigger picture which you can't understand. We can discuss it more another day.
But sometimes it's interesting. It's an interesting question because it's not linear, is it?
No. That's a very interesting thing because often you think, Helen's so good there, 'cause you think of a cause being in before and the effect afterwards. But if you observe your life, you'll sometimes see that a difficult situation you go through in life prepares you for something which happens later in life. So it's almost like the cause and the effect aren't necessarily in linear time. The cause can come after the effect because it's preparing you for something later. So it's something you had to experience in order to meet this thing and deal with it, which happens much later on. So it's like, it's not, as Helen puts it, necessarily linear. Any more?
On the topic of sin, I think I read somewhere, I think it was the book, A Course in Miracles. Sin described as that ultimately every sin is a request or a deep quest for love.
That's nice.
Do you agree with that? Do you see it as such?
I've never liked the concept of sin at all. And as I was brought up a Christian, they have quite a lot of sinful things.
I know.
But I think
We're very good at that.
Yeah, I just go back to the thing of it. Sin just means you're missing the point of your existence. But even the missing the point of your existence is part of the whole drama. So, from my point of view, there's not really any sin.
Philip, can I ask something?
Yeah.
Then is that correct that everything is a story, but it is my story? And you are saying that when I open my eyes, the world is turning for me. But for somebody else, if there is, it is something else. So I am going through this path. Somebody else is going some other path. And it is told to me that I was born in this place, in that family, which I don't know, I have never seen. Religions are told to me. There were Egypts, there were world wars, things like that I have never seen, but it is somewhere in me, loaded me. I guess it is in the causal or subtle, I am not sure now. And it is affecting my life story today. Through everything, of course. And when I close my eyes and die, there is no world, there is no my family, kids, anything. So this three-dimensional thing I don't understand properly. And this time, this cause, and there's a reason triggers things, and I behave, which I don't behave myself. It happens because I am a vehicle.
You're a...
I'm a vehicle.
Vehicle.
Oh, a vehicle, yeah.
So at the end, I shouldn't be doing anything myself. I feel like I am a program.
Do you feel like that?
A program.
Yeah. Is that your experience?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just playing through me
Yeah.
as a story, or sometimes it is told in quantum physics,
Yeah.
They say that the awareness focuses in something. If there is no focus,
Yeah.
there is no story. But why I focus on this, I want to do this turning, but some other doesn't focus on that,
Yeah.
to reach divine at the end.
Yeah. You put it really nicely.
So I am confused about this.
What confuses you about it?
This story itself confuses
Yeah.
me. Because as I said, how I came here, how I choose this, I have no idea
Yeah.
what's happening. Nowadays I feel totally empty myself, without reason, without use.
Yeah.
I am unuseful, even I feel like that.
Yeah.
And I am lost. This is the feelings going through me, for everyone it's different, but what is playing in me, I cannot find it out.
Yeah.
What is causing that, I cannot find. And I am thinking since last week the life I have,
Yeah.
but everything is taught also. This is taught to me, what's happening. When
Yeah.
I look at today, there is a part that I know, but there is a part I don't know. It is just told to me like that.
Yeah.
Even for all religions, I think like that. For all nations, even when we are sitting here, there is no outside world for me.
Yeah.
It is like, when you open the television, there is a frequency
Yeah.
going. I don't mind family is in Turkey, but is there a Turkey now? I have no idea. Yeah, anyway, I'm confused, I guess.
But
Because
does it
of turning.
But that links back to your question last week when you said about your destiny, didn't you? Did your destiny? Did you say
Yeah, I
destiny or
mentioned.
will?
I said, destiny and free will. I
Yeah.
don't believe in free will. Even the water I am drinking
Yeah.
is not my choice. This is how I see it. I choose nothing. I am.
Listen to that.
But if you were to see yourself there, then you'd realize that you are making all these decisions. It's about knowing who you are.
I love the way you're describing it. I almost haven't got anything to add because you've described it so wonderfully, and I'm in total agreement with you. I hardly dare say it, but I don't believe in free will either. But that's just my experience. But for me, everything seems to happen in spite of me rather than because of me. And at times you think your life's just total chaos and it's all fallen apart. then I've noticed how very gradually it sort of suddenly pulls itself back together again in ways I could never possibly envisage. So having seen that for so long, it's sort of, now when it does fall apart, I think, well, try not to worry too much. Just sort of think, a couple of years it will have all pulled itself back together again. But I don't know how it works, because my knowledge is no greater than your knowledge. So I'm presenting you with certain metaphors in the teaching and my own experience. But ultimately, behind it all, it has to remain a mystery how it works and how it unfolds. But I'm in complete agreement with you on everything you've said. There's a brilliant bit I adore which Joseph Campbell says, which I think is relevant. I don't want to keep you here too long because you've got... Schopenhauer. Anyway, this is Joseph Campbell, who's a brilliant American mythologist. He's dead now. And he says, that's right, Schopenhauer, in his splendid essay called On an Apparent Intention in the Fate of the Individual, points out that when you reach an advanced age and look back over your lifetime, it can seem to have had a consistent order and plan, as though composed by some novelist. Events that, when they occurred, had seemed accidental and of little moment, turn out to have been indispensable factors in the composition of a consistent plot. So who composed that plot? Schopenhauer suggests that just as your dreams are composed by an aspect of yourself of which your consciousness is unaware, so too your whole life is composed by the will within you. And just as people whom you will have met apparently by mere chance became leading agents in the structuring of your life, so too will you have served unknowingly as an agent giving meaning to the lives of others. The whole thing gears together like one big symphony, with everything unconsciously structuring everything else. And Schopenhauer concludes that it is as though our lives were the features of the one great dream of a single dreamer, in which all the dream characters dream too, so that everything links to everything else, moved by the one will to life, which is the universal will in nature. It's a magnificent idea, an idea that appears in India in the mythic image of the net of Indra, which is a net of gems, where at every crossing of one thread over another there is a gem reflecting all the other reflective gems. Everything arises in mutual relation to everything else, so you can't blame anybody for anything. It is even as though there were a single intention behind it all, which always makes some kind of sense, though none of us knows what the sense might be, or has lived a life that he quite intended. I think he puts it rather well there. I think you might have had enough there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next week we'll do the symbolism of the macabre, because we've sort of done the groundwork now.
I think I'm leaving here having a little existential crisis.
Okay.